The flames danced higher as Sarah Martinez watched her military uniform burn in the metal trash behind a recruitment office. The fabric curled and blackened, releasing smoke that carried away 8 years of her life in the Army. Her dress blues, her combat uniforms, her patches, and insignia, everything that had once defined her identity, was turning to ash. "You sure about this, Martinez?" asked Sergeant Thompson, the recruitment officer who had become her friend over the past few months. He stood beside her in the parking lot, his own uniform crisp and pressed, a stark contrast to her civilian clothes. Sarah nodded, her jaw set with determination. "I'm done pretending this is enough for me, Tom. I've given everything to the Army, and they've made it clear that being a woman means I'll never be allowed to serve where I'm truly needed." The rejection letter was still folded in her back pocket, the same form letter she'd received 3 times now. "Thank you for your interest in special operations. However, current policy does not permit female personnel in combat roles within elite units." The words had burned worse than the physical flames consuming her uniform. Thompson shifted uncomfortably. He'd seen good soldiers leave before, but never like this. Never with such quiet fury and disappointed resolve. "You know, there are other opportunities. The Army is changing slowly but surely. Maybe in a few years." A few years. Sarah's voice carried 8 years of frustration. "Tom, I've been the top performer in every training exercise. I've deployed twice to Afghanistan, saved lives under fire, and earned commendations that most male soldiers only dream about. I've proven myself over and over again, and the answer is still no, because I'm a woman." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small collection of medals and ribbons. One by one, she dropped them into the flames. The Bronze Star for Valor. The Purple Heart from the IED blast that had nearly killed her, but hadn't stopped her from dragging 2 wounded soldiers to safety. The Combat Medical Badge she'd earned saving lives under enemy fire. "Those mean something," Thompson said quietly. "They mean I'm good enough to die for my country, but not good enough to serve it the way I want to," Sarah replied, watching the ribbons melt. "The Army doesn't want me to be the soldier I know I can be, so I'll find someone who does." Thompson frowned. "What do you mean?" Sarah turned away from the fire, her decision crystallized by the heat on her face. "I'm going to the Navy. I'm going to try out for the SEALs." The recruitment officer's eyes widened. "Sarah, you know that's impossible, right? The SEALs don't take women either. If anything, they're even more exclusive than Special Forces." A small smile played at the corners of Sarah's mouth. "They don't take women yet. But policies change, and when they do, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be so ready that they can't say no." 3 months later, Sarah stood in the cold Pacific Ocean at 0500 hours, her body already numb from the frigid water. Around her, 47 other recruits struggled through their first week of basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, known simply as BUD/S. The instructors had been clear from day one. This was the most challenging military training in the world, and most of them wouldn't make it to the end. The policy change had come suddenly, announced just 6 weeks after Sarah's Army discharge. The Navy, under pressure from Congress and changing social attitudes, had opened SEAL training to qualified women on a trial basis. Sarah had been one of the first to apply, and her Army record had gotten her accepted despite the skepticism of many in the Navy hierarchy. "Martinez," bellowed Chief Petty Officer James Rodriguez, the lead instructor whose voice carried the authority of 20 years in the teams. "You're falling behind. I thought Army soldiers were supposed to be tough." Sarah gritted her teeth and pushed harder through the surf. The physical training was unlike anything she'd experienced, even in the Army's most demanding units. Every day brought new challenges designed to break both body and spirit. The cold water training, the endless running in soft sand, the obstacle courses that seemed impossible to complete, it was all designed to find the mental breaking point of each candidate. But Sarah had found something in the water and sand that she'd never found in the Army. Pure meritocracy. Here, performance was everything. If you could keep up, if you could push through the pain, if you refused to quit, nothing else mattered. The instructors were hard on everyone, and she was just another recruit trying to earn her place. Sound off, Martinez. Chief Rodriguez called during a particularly brutal log carry exercise. 8 recruits shared the weight of a massive wooden log, running through the soft sand while the instructor jogged alongside them. "Booyah, Chief," Sarah responded with the traditional SEAL battle cry, her voice strong despite the burning in her lungs. "Why are you here, Martinez? What makes you think you belong with the teams?" It was a question the instructors asked all the recruits, usually when they were at their most exhausted and vulnerable. Sarah had been dreading it, knowing that her answer would define how she was perceived by both instructors and fellow candidates. "Because I can do the job, Chief," she called out, matching the pace of the log carry. "That's what they all say," Rodriguez replied. "But when the bullets start flying and your teammate is bleeding out, I need to know you can carry him to safety. Can you do that, Martinez?" "I've already done it, Chief." Sarah's response was immediate and fierce. Bronze Star with V device, Afghanistan, 2018. Carried 2 wounded soldiers 300 meters under enemy fire after an IED blast knocked out our vehicle. The log carry continued, but Sarah noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The other recruits glanced at her with new respect, and even Chief Rodriguez's expression showed a flicker of approval. "Tell me about it, Martinez," he said, his voice less challenging and more genuinely interested. As they continued running, Sarah found herself describing that day in Afghanistan. The convoy hit, the explosion that had thrown her against the vehicle wall, the sight of her 2 team members bleeding in the street while Taliban fighters closed in. She described the decision to ignore her own injuries and pull them both to safety, one at a time, while enemy rounds kicked up dust around her feet. "The second trip was harder," she admitted, her breathing labored from the exercise. "Private Johnson was bigger than me, and I was already running on adrenaline from the first rescue. But leaving him wasn't an option." "What happened when you got them to the extraction point?" asked one of her log carry partners, a young sailor named Peterson who had been particularly skeptical of having a woman in the class. "Johnson survived, lost his leg below the knee, but he's alive and married now with 2 kids. Send me pictures every Christmas," Sarah said. The other soldier, Corporal Williams, didn't make it. Lost too much blood during transport. The group continued their exercise in thoughtful silence. When they finally set the log down at the finish line, Chief Rodriguez approached Sarah directly. "That's what we're looking for, Martinez. Not just physical capability, but the proven willingness to risk everything for your teammates. The fact that you're a woman doesn't change that." As the weeks progressed, Sarah found herself settling into the brutal rhythm of BUD/S training. Each day brought new challenges, and each challenge provided another opportunity to prove herself. The Hell Week was approaching, 5.5 days of continuous training with less than 4 hours of sleep total, designed to push every candidate beyond their perceived limits. Many of her classmates had already dropped out, ringing the brass bell that signaled their withdrawal from the program. Each time the bell rang, Sarah felt a mixture of sympathy for the departed candidate and renewed determination to avoid that fate herself. "You know," said Peterson one evening as they cleaned their weapons after a particularly difficult day of combat training, "when I first heard they were letting women into BUD/S, I thought it was just political correctness gone crazy." Sarah looked up from her rifle, curious about where this conversation was heading. "I mean, I figured they'd lower the standards or make special accommodations or something," Peterson continued. "But watching you out there today, the way you handled that combat scenario, the way you backed up Thompson when he was pinned down, I get it now." "Get what?" Sarah asked. "That it's not about being male or female. It's about being a warrior. And you're definitely a warrior." Similar conversations were happening throughout the class. The recruits who remained had formed tight bonds forged in shared suffering and mutual dependence. Sarah had proven herself not through words or politics, but through actions repeated daily under the most demanding circumstances imaginable. The instructors, too, had begun treating her exactly as they treated every other candidate, with demanding expectations and grudging respect earned through performance. Chief Rodriguez, in particular, seemed to take satisfaction in pushing her harder than anyone else, as if he understood that she couldn't afford to be seen as receiving any special treatment. Martinez, he called during a night navigation exercise in the mountains outside San Diego. Your team leader for this phase. Get your people through the course and to the extraction point. Mission failure is not an option. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Leading other SEAL candidates through a complex mission was both an honor and a test. She knew that every decision she made would be scrutinized, and that failure would be seen as evidence that women didn't belong in the teams. She gathered her team of 6 recruits around her, studying the map and mission parameters in the red light of her tactical flashlight. The course covered 12 miles of rough terrain, with multiple checkpoints that had to be reached within specific time windows. Each checkpoint required different skills: rappelling, underwater navigation, weapons handling, and medical scenarios. "All right, listen up," she said to her team. "We've got 6 hours to complete this course, and we're going to do it without losing a single team member. Peterson and Williams take point. Thompson and Garcia, you're our heavy weapons team. Johnson, you're with me on navigation and medical." The team moved out into the darkness, their trust in Sarah's leadership already established through weeks of shared training. As they navigated the challenging course, she found herself drawing on every lesson she'd learned in the Army, every leadership principle she'd absorbed, and every ounce of determination that had brought her this far. When they reached the final checkpoint with 20 minutes to spare, all 6 team members accounted for, and all mission objectives completed, Sarah felt a surge of pride unlike anything she'd experienced in the Army. This wasn't just about proving that women could serve in combat roles. It was about proving that she personally belonged among the elite warriors of the SEAL teams. "Outstanding work, team leader," Chief Rodriguez said as he checked them in at the finish line. "Your team performed flawlessly under your command." As Sarah looked around at her exhausted but triumphant teammates, she realized that something fundamental had changed. The doubt and skepticism that had surrounded her arrival at BUD/S had been replaced by something far more valuable: the respect of her peers and the confidence that came from proven performance under pressure. Hell Week was still ahead, along with months of additional training phases that would test every aspect of her physical and mental capabilities. But standing in the California darkness with her team around her, Sarah Martinez knew that she had already achieved something significant. She had found her place among warriors, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Hell Week arrived like a storm that everyone could see coming, but no one could truly prepare for. At 2,300 hours on Sunday night, the air horn sounded across the BUD/S compound, and Sarah Martinez's world transformed into a waking nightmare designed to break the strongest minds and bodies. "Hit the surf. Move, move, move." The instructors' voices cut through the darkness as candidates scrambled from their barracks. Within minutes, Sarah found herself running toward the Pacific Ocean with 43 remaining classmates, the cold night air already seeping through her wet suit. The next 5.5 days would blur together into a continuous test of human endurance. No more than 4 hours of sleep total, constant physical activity, and challenges designed to push every candidate beyond their breaking point. The brass bell that signaled surrender gleamed in the moonlight, waiting for those who decided they'd reached their limit. "Water temperature is 57 degrees, candidates," announced Chief Rodriguez as they lined up at the water's edge. "You'll be spending a lot of quality time with the Pacific this week. I suggest you make friends with her quickly." The first surf torture session lasted 2 hours. Sarah linked arms with her classmates as they sat in the frigid waves, their bodies slowly going numb while instructors rotated fresh and energetic, shouting questions about naval history and SEAL traditions. The cold was unlike anything she'd experienced, penetrating every layer of clothing and seeming to freeze her bones. "Martinez," called out Instructor Petty Officer Collins, a lean man with intense eyes who had taken particular interest in testing Sarah's limits. What's the first phase of BUD/S training? Basic conditioning phase, instructor. Sarah's teeth chattered as she shouted her response. Wrong. It's 8 weeks of finding out who really wants to be here. Are you sure you want to be here, Martinez? But yeah, yes, instructor. We'll see about that. The hours blended together in a haze of cold water, soft sand runs, obstacle courses, and boat crews racing their heavy rubber boats through the surf. Sarah's boat crew had bonded into a tight unit, each member understanding that their individual success depended entirely on the team's performance. Come on, guys, she shouted as they carried their 200-pound boat over their heads for the 5th mile of the morning. Peterson, I need more from you. Williams, keep that pace up. Her leadership had emerged naturally during the training, and even the instructors had begun using her as an example of proper technique and attitude. But Hell Week was different. Here, rank and previous accomplishments meant nothing. Only the ability to continue when every instinct screamed to quit mattered. On Tuesday morning, after more than 36 hours of continuous activity, the first major casualty occurred. Jenkins, a strong candidate who had been near the top of the class, simply stopped running during a beach workout. He walked to the bell, rang it 3 times, and quietly disappeared from their lives. That's how it happens, whispered Thompson as they watched Jenkins walk away. One moment you're fine, the next moment you're done. The mind just decides it's had enough. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold ocean water. She had witnessed similar moments in the Army, but never in training so intense that mental breakdown seemed almost inevitable. The key was to avoid thinking about time, about how much more they had to endure, about the growing exhaustion that made every movement feel like pushing through concrete. Focus on the next evolution, she told herself and her boat crew. Just the next challenge. Don't think about anything else. Wednesday brought the pool exercises that many candidates considered the most psychologically challenging part of Hell Week. With their hands and feet bound, they had to survive underwater scenarios designed to simulate real combat situations where a SEAL might find themselves compromised and fighting for their lives. Sarah descended into the deep end of the pool, her breathing apparatus secured by the safety divers who monitored every exercise. The scenario called for her to navigate underwater while bound, find a specific object on the pool bottom, and surface at a designated location, all while underwater instructors tried to disorient her by removing her mask and disrupting her equipment. The first attempt went smoothly. The second time, Instructor Collins personally descended to add complications to her exercise. He removed her mask, tangled her breathing apparatus, and spun her around until she lost all sense of direction in the chlorinated darkness. Panic tried to creep into Sarah's mind as she struggled to clear her equipment and find the surface. This was exactly the kind of situation where candidates often broke, with a combination of physical stress and psychological pressure overwhelmed their ability to think clearly. But her Army training kicked in, the muscle memory of staying calm under fire that had saved lives in Afghanistan. She ignored the instructor's interference, systematically cleared her breathing apparatus, located the pool bottom by feel, found the required object, and surfaced at the correct location. When she broke the surface, she saw Chief Rodriguez nodding approvingly from the pool deck. Outstanding, Martinez. That's how it's done. By Thursday, the class had lost 6 more candidates. Those who remained moved like zombies, their bodies functioning on autopilot while their minds focused solely on the next evolution, the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove they belonged. Sleep deprivation had reached levels that made simple tasks like tying knots or remembering basic instructions incredibly difficult. Sarah found herself propping up weaker members of her boat crew, offering encouragement when she barely had energy to speak. Come on, Peterson. Just a few more hours. We're almost through the worst of it. Peterson's eyes were glazed with exhaustion, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. I don't think I can make it, Sarah. I'm seeing things that aren't there. You can make it, she insisted, grabbing his arm to steady him during a particularly brutal log carry exercise. We all make it together, or we don't make it all. The boat crews had become more than training partnerships. They were lifelines in an ocean of physical and mental challenge. Sarah realized that her role had evolved beyond just completing the training herself. She had become the anchor for her team, the source of strength they drew upon when their own reserves were completely depleted. Friday brought the final phase of Hell Week, a series of challenges designed to test whatever remained of each candidate's capabilities. Sarah's body felt like it belonged to someone else, her muscles operating through sheer willpower rather than any remaining physical strength. But her mind remained sharp, focused on the goal that had brought her this far. Final Evolution candidates, announced Chief Rodriguez as they gathered on the beach one last time. 12-mile run in full gear, followed by a combat scenario exercise. Complete this, and Hell Week is behind you. The run began before dawn, their footsteps rhythmic on the hard sand near the water's edge. Sarah's boat crew stayed together, supporting each other through the miles of beach and trail that led away from the ocean and into the hills surrounding the training facility. "Talk to me, guys," she called out during the 7th mile, when the pace had begun to slow and she could see the strain on everyone's faces. "What are you going to do when we finish this training?" "I'm going to sleep for 3 days straight," gasped Williams. "I'm going to eat the biggest steak I can find," added Peterson. "I'm going to call my mom and tell her I made it through Hell Week," said Thompson. Sarah smiled despite her exhaustion. "I'm going to look back on this as the week I proved I belong here. The week I earned my place among warriors." The combat scenario at the end of the run was deliberately chaotic and confusing, designed to test their ability to function as a team when completely exhausted. Sarah found herself designated as team leader again, responsible for coordinating a complex mission involving multiple objectives and time constraints. "All right, listen up," she told her team as they received their briefing. "We've come too far to fail now. Williams and Peterson, you handle the demolition objective. Thompson and Garcia establish overwatch positions. Johnson and I will handle the hostage rescue scenario." Despite their exhaustion, her team executed the mission flawlessly. Months of training had created automatic responses that functioned even when conscious thought became difficult. When the exercise ended and Chief Rodriguez declared them successful, Sarah felt tears of relief mixing with the sweat and salt spray on her face. "Congratulations, candidates," Chief Rodriguez announced as the sun rose over the Pacific Ocean. "You have successfully completed Hell Week. You are no longer candidates. You are students in the basic underwater demolition/SEAL program." The transformation was immediate and profound. The instructors who had spent 5 days pushing them beyond human limits suddenly treated them with a respect that came from shared understanding of what they had accomplished. The candidates who remained, 31 out of the original 48, looked at each other with the quiet pride of survivors. Martinez, Chief Rodriguez, approached her as the group prepared to return to the barracks for their first real sleep in 6 days. "I want you to know that your performance this week was exemplary. You didn't just complete the training, you led others through it." "Thank you, Chief. But I couldn't have done it without my team." "That's exactly the right answer," he replied. "That's what makes someone SEAL material. Individual excellence in service of team success." As Sarah finally collapsed on her bunk, her body screaming with exhaustion, but her spirit soaring with accomplishment, she reflected on how far she had come from that day when she burned her Army uniform. The girl who had been told she could never serve in elite units was now one step closer to earning the coveted SEAL Trident. The training wasn't over. Months of additional phases lay ahead, each presenting new challenges and opportunities to prove herself. But Hell Week had been the ultimate test, the crucible that separated those who talked about being warriors from those who actually were warriors. Sarah Martinez was a warrior, and she was exactly where she belonged. 6 months after Hell Week, Sarah Martinez stood on the deck of a Navy destroyer, watching the coastline of Syria disappear into the morning haze. The second phase of BUD/S training had tested her combat diving and underwater skills, while third phase had pushed her tactical abilities to new levels. Now, As a newly minted SEAL operator assigned to SEAL Team 6, she was heading toward her first real mission. The weight of her gear felt different now than it had during training. Every piece of equipment had a purpose, every weapon system was familiar, and every team member around her was someone whose abilities she knew intimately. The months of additional training after Hell Week had forged them into something unprecedented, the first operational SEAL team to include a female operator. "Martinez, you ready for this?" asked Lieutenant Commander Jake Sullivan, the team leader whose reputation for successful missions had made him a legend within the SEAL community. His decision to request Sarah for his team had raised eyebrows at the highest levels of Naval Special Warfare Command. "I've been ready since the day I burned my Army uniform, sir," Sarah replied, checking her rifle one final time. The mission briefing had been sobering. Intelligence indicated that an American journalist, Rebecca Chun, was being held by a terrorist cell in a compound near the Turkish border. The facility was heavily fortified, surrounded by experienced fighters, and located in territory where conventional rescue operations would be impossible. It was exactly the kind of mission that SEAL Team 6 had been created to handle. "Listen up, everyone," Sullivan addressed the 12-member team as they gathered in the ship's briefing room. "This isn't training anymore. Chun has been held for 6 weeks, and intel suggests the situation is deteriorating rapidly. We have one shot to get her out alive." The plan was elegant in its complexity. A night insertion by fastboat would get them close to the Syrian coast, followed by a 5-mile overland movement to the target compound. Sarah's role as the team's designated marksman would be crucial. She would provide overwatch and precise fire support while the assault element breached the facility. "Martinez," Sullivan said, as the briefing concluded, "you'll be positioned here approximately 400 meters from the main compound. Your job is to keep the guards' heads down and eliminate any threats to the assault team. Think you can handle that?" Sarah looked at the aerial photographs of the target area, calculating angles and fields of fire with the analytical mind that had made her one of the top snipers in her BUD/S class. "Roger, sir. I'll own that position." The insertion went perfectly. Their small boat delivered them to a deserted stretch of beach at 0200 hours, and the team began their movement inland through rocky terrain that provided excellent concealment. Sarah felt the familiar calm that came with operational focus, her senses heightened and her mind clear. Moving through hostile territory with a SEAL team was unlike anything she had experienced in the Army. Every member of the team moved with absolute precision, communicating through hand signals and shared understanding developed through countless hours of training. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary sound, no doubt about each person's role and capabilities. "Overwatch position in sight," whispered Petty Officer First Class Mike Torres, Sarah's spotter, and the team member responsible for getting her into position safely. "Looks clear." Sarah studied the rocky outcropping that would serve as her sniper position. It offered excellent visibility of the compound while providing cover and concealment from enemy observation. More importantly, it had multiple escape routes if their position became compromised. "Roger, moving to position," she responded, beginning the careful climb to her firing point. The compound below was exactly as described in the intelligence briefings. A main building surrounded by smaller structures, guard towers at each corner, and armed sentries patrolling the perimeter. Sarah settled into her shooting position, adjusting her rifle's scope and studying the patterns of guard movement. "Overwatch in position," she reported through her throat microphone. "I count 8 external guards, rotating in 15-minute intervals. 2 guards in the north tower, 1 in the south tower. East and west towers appear unmanned." "Copy Overwatch," came Sullivan's voice through her earpiece. "Assault team is moving to breach position. Stand by." The next few minutes felt like hours as Sarah watched the compound through her rifle scope, ready to engage any threat to her teammates. She had spent hundreds of hours in training scenarios, but this was different. Lives depended on her accuracy, her judgment, her ability to make split-second decisions under pressure. "Contact front." The call came from the assault team leader, followed immediately by the sound of gunfire. Sarah's training took over. Her scope found the first target, a guard running toward the sound of gunfire with an assault rifle. The crosshairs settled on center mass. Her breathing steadied, and she squeezed the trigger with the smooth motion that had become second nature. The guard dropped immediately. Sarah was already acquiring her next target before the first one hit the ground. A second guard appeared from the main building, firing wildly in the direction of the assault team. Another precise shot eliminated that threat. "Nice shooting, Overwatch," Torres said calmly beside her, using his spotting scope to identify additional threats. Multiple tangos moving to the roof of the main building. Sarah shifted her aim upward, finding 3 armed fighters taking positions behind a low wall on the building's roof. These were more challenging shots, requiring her to account for elevation and the probability of moving targets. She took a deep breath, settled her crosshairs on the first fighter, and began engaging systematically. The firefight lasted only 8 minutes, but in those 8 minutes, Sarah eliminated 11 threats with 11 shots. Her precise fire had protected the assault team during their most vulnerable moments, allowing them to reach the building and begin their search for the hostage. "Jackpot! Jackpot!" came a call that meant they had found Rebecca Chun. "Package is secure and mobile." "Copy, assault team. Overwatch is covering your withdrawal," Sarah replied, continuing to scan for threats as her teammates moved toward the extraction point. The withdrawal was more dangerous than the insertion. Now the team was moving with a rescued hostage who might be injured or disoriented, and enemy reinforcements could arrive at any moment. Sarah's job was to ensure that no threats could interfere with their movement to the beach. Multiple vehicles approaching from the east, Torres reported, his voice tense but controlled. "Looks like a pursuit force." Sarah adjusted her position to cover the eastern approach to their route. Through her scope, she could see a convoy of trucks carrying armed fighters, racing to intercept the SEAL team before they could reach the extraction point. "Overwatch engaging pursuit force," she announced, beginning to fire at the lead vehicles. Her shots were precise and deliberate: driver's compartments, engine blocks, and tires. The goal was to stop or slow the pursuit, not necessarily to inflict maximum casualties. Within minutes, the convoy was disabled. Some vehicles stopped completely, while others had veered off the road. "Outstanding work, Overwatch." Sullivan's voice carried both relief and professional admiration. "Package is secure. Extraction in progress." The boat ride back to the destroyer was quiet, each team member processing the successful completion of their first operational mission. Rebecca Chun, though exhausted and traumatized by her captivity, was alive and would soon be reunited with her family. "Martinez," Sullivan approached Sarah as they prepared to debark. "I want you to know that your performance tonight was exceptional. 11 for 11 under combat conditions, with multiple threat engagements that directly saved team members' lives." Sarah felt a surge of pride, but also something deeper, a sense of belonging that she had never experienced in the Army. "Thank you, sir. This is exactly why I wanted to be here." "The thing is," Sullivan continued, "this was supposed to be a test mission for you. Command wanted to see how you'd perform in actual combat before giving you full operational status." Sarah's stomach tightened, and Sullivan smiled. "I'm recommending you for immediate advancement to team leader. We've got a mission coming up that's going to require someone with your specific skills and leadership capabilities." 3 weeks later, Sarah found herself briefing her own team for a high-priority mission. The terrorist organization responsible for kidnapping Rebecca Chun had been tracked to a larger compound in Iraq, and intelligence indicated they were planning a major attack against American interests in the region. "This is a direct action mission," Sarah told her 8-person team, studying their faces for any signs of doubt or hesitation. "We go in hard and fast, eliminate the leadership, gather intelligence, and extract before enemy reinforcements can respond." Leading other SEALs in a combat was both an honor and a tremendous responsibility. Each person on her team was highly trained and experienced, and they were trusting her judgment with their lives. The weight of command felt different from anything she had experienced as a sniper or team member. Martinez, said Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, the same instructor who had pushed her through BUD/S training and was now serving as her team's senior enlisted advisor. You've got good people here. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and trust your team. The mission launched at midnight from a forward operating base in northern Iraq. Sarah's team moved through the desert landscape with the precision of a well-oiled machine, each member understanding their role and executing flawlessly. The compound appeared exactly as described in the intelligence briefings, a fortified position housing the terrorist cell's leadership and planning elements. Breach in 30 seconds, Sarah announced through the team radio network, watching as her demolitions expert prepared the charges that would create their entry point. The assault was swift and decisive. Sarah's team moved through the compound with overwhelming force, clearing rooms methodically and securing intelligence materials while engaging enemy fighters. Her leadership during the firefight was instinctive and effective, positioning team members to maximize their advantages while minimizing exposure to enemy fire. Target down, reported Petty Officer Williams, confirming the elimination of the terrorist leader they had come to find. Intelligence package secured, added the team's communications specialist, gathering computer equipment and documents that would provide valuable information about planned attacks. Sarah felt a moment of satisfaction as the mission objectives were completed, but she knew that extraction was often the most dangerous phase of any operation. Enemy reinforcements were already responding to the sound of gunfire, and her team needed to reach their helicopter landing zone before becoming overwhelmed. Exfil in 2 minutes, she announced. Williams, Torres, take point. Rodriguez, Peterson, rearguard. Everyone else, maintain formation and keep moving. The team moved toward their extraction point with Sarah coordinating their movement and ensuring that no one was left behind. When the helicopters appeared on the horizon, she felt the same surge of pride and accomplishment that had carried her through Hell Week. As they lifted off into the Iraqi night sky, Rodriguez approached her with a rare smile on his weathered face. Martinez, I've been in the teams for 15 years, and I've never seen a better combat leader. You've got the touch, the ability to make good decisions under pressure, and keep everyone focused on the mission. Sarah looked around at her team, each member calm and professional despite having just completed a dangerous mission in enemy territory. We all did this together, Chief. That's what makes us SEALs. But privately, she knew that something fundamental had changed. The girl who had burned her army uniform in frustration and anger had become something she had never dared to imagine, a combat leader trusted with the most dangerous and important missions that America could assign. The SEAL Trident on her uniform wasn't just a symbol of personal achievement anymore. It was proof that excellence and determination could overcome any barrier, and that the warrior spirit knew no gender. 2 years after her first combat mission, Sarah Martinez stood in the Pentagon briefing room, facing the most senior military leadership in the country. The walls were lined with portraits of previous Joint Chiefs, their stern faces watching as she prepared to present the mission that would either cement her reputation or end her career. Ladies and gentlemen, announced Admiral Patricia Hayes, the first female chief of naval operations in U.S. history. I present Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, SEAL Team 6, Mission Commander for Operation Silver Thunder. Sarah felt the weight of every star and flag in the room as she activated the large display screen behind her. The intelligence photographs showed a compound in the mountains of Afghanistan, but this wasn't just another terrorist stronghold. This was the headquarters of a new threat, a coalition of international terrorist organizations that had begun coordinating attacks against Western targets worldwide. 3 weeks ago, Sarah began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to propose. Satellite intelligence identified this facility as the primary planning center for the organization calling itself the Global Resistance Network. Our sources indicate that leaders from 6 major terrorist groups are currently meeting here to finalize plans for simultaneous attacks in New York, London, Paris, and Berlin. General Morrison, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward in his chair. What makes this different from the hundreds of other terrorist facilities we've targeted over the past 2 decades? Sarah clicked to the next slide, showing detailed architectural drawings and intelligence assessments. The location, sir. This compound is built into a mountain cave system that extends for miles underground. It's naturally protected against airstrikes, and the only approach routes are through narrow valleys that can be easily defended. Conventional forces would suffer massive casualties attempting an assault. "So what are you proposing, Lieutenant?" asked Admiral Hayes. "A small team insertion using a method that's never been attempted in combat conditions," Sarah replied, changing the slide to show a technical diagram that drew murmurs from around the room. High-altitude parachute insertion directly into the mountain cave system, using modified equipment that allows us to navigate underground passages while maintaining communications and tactical coordination. The silence that followed was deafening. What Sarah was proposing bordered on the impossible: parachuting into a cave system, conducting a complex mission in underground terrain, and extracting without air support or conventional backup. "Lieutenant," said General Morrison carefully, "are you seriously suggesting that we drop a SEAL team into a mountain and hope they can find their way around underground tunnels well enough to eliminate multiple high-value targets?" Sarah had anticipated this reaction. "Not hope, sir. Plan, train, and execute with precision. My team has spent the past 6 months training in similar cave systems in Colorado and Virginia. We've developed navigation techniques, communication protocols, and extraction methods specifically for this type of environment." She clicked to the next slide, showing photographs of her team during their specialized training. Cave diving, underground rappelling, subterranean navigation, and close-quarters combat in confined spaces. We've run this mission profile dozens of times in training, and we're ready to execute. Admiral Hayes studied the photographs with obvious interest. "What's your success probability assessment, Lieutenant?" 90% chance of successful target elimination, 70% chance of complete team extraction, Sarah replied without hesitation. "The risk is significant, but the intelligence value and prevention of coordinated attacks makes it acceptable." The debate that followed was intense. Some generals argued that the mission was too dangerous, too experimental, and too dependent on untested techniques. Others pointed out that conventional options would be even more costly and less likely to succeed. "The question," said General Morrison finally, "is whether we trust Lieutenant Martinez and her team to pull off something that's never been done before." Admiral Hayes looked directly at Sarah. "Lieutenant, give me one reason why I should approve the most dangerous mission in special operations history." Sarah met her gaze steadily. "Because conventional approaches won't work, ma'am. This enemy has learned to hide where we can't reach them with traditional methods. They're counting on the fact that we'll stick to proven tactics while they plan attacks that could kill thousands of innocent people. Sometimes you have to do something unprecedented to stop something unthinkable." The mission approval came 24 hours later, along with authorization for Sarah to handpick her team from across the entire SEAL community. She chose 8 operators, each selected for specific skills that would be crucial in the underground environment they would be entering. Chief Rodriguez was her obvious choice for Team Senior enlisted advisor. His experience and steady leadership would be essential for maintaining team cohesion under extreme stress. Petty Officer Torres brought his expertise in explosives and demolitions, crucial for breaching underground barriers and creating emergency exit routes. For the team's medical specialist, Sarah chose Hospital Corpsman First Class Jennifer Walsh, one of only 3 female SEALs who had completed training after Sarah's pioneering class. Walsh's small size would be an advantage in confined spaces, and her medical skills could mean the difference between life and death if team members were injured in the cave system. "You realize what you're asking us to do?" Rodriguez said during their final team meeting before deployment. "We're going to jump out of an airplane into a hole in the ground, fight our way through God knows how many enemies in the dark, and then somehow get out alive." Sarah looked around the table at the 8 faces of her team each showing the calm professionalism that marked elite warriors. That's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to do it because no one else can. The flight to Afghanistan was conducted in absolute secrecy, using a specially modified aircraft that could reach the extreme altitude necessary for their insertion. At 38,000 feet, the thin air and bitter cold made breathing difficult even with supplemental oxygen, but Sarah's team prepared their equipment with the methodical precision that marked their profession. "Oxygen check," Sarah called out, verifying that each team member's life support system was functioning properly. The modified parachute systems they would use were experimental, designed to allow controlled descent into the cave opening while carrying full combat loads. "Jump in 2 minutes," announced the aircraft's loadmaster. "Weather conditions are optimal, wind speed minimal." Sarah felt the familiar calm that came before combat operations, her mind focused entirely on the mission ahead. Through the small aircraft window, she could see the mountain peaks of Afghanistan silhouetted against the star-filled sky, and somewhere below them was the cave entrance that would become their doorway into the most dangerous mission any of them had ever attempted. "Stand up, hook up," she called out, and her team rose as one, checking each other's equipment with a thoroughness that could mean the difference between success and disaster. The red light near the aircraft door switched to green, and Sarah stepped into the darkness above Afghanistan. The wind tore at her equipment as she fell through the thin air, her altimeter counting down the seconds until deployment. At precisely the calculated altitude, her experimental parachute deployed, and she began the most precise flying of her life. The cave entrance appeared below her like a dark mouth in the mountainside, barely visible in the starlight. Sarah adjusted her approach, using the specialized steering techniques her team had practiced for months. Landing inside a cave opening while wearing full combat gear required precision that left no margin for error. Her feet touched solid rock exactly where planned, and she immediately began collapsing her parachute while scanning for threats. One by one, her team members landed around her, each executing the insertion flawlessly despite its unprecedented difficulty. "Team consolidated," reported Rodriguez quietly through the encrypted communication system that would allow them to coordinate underground. "No apparent enemy contact during insertion." Sarah checked her navigation equipment and activated the specialized lighting system that would allow them to move through the cave system while maintaining night vision capabilities. "Move to first objective. Stay tight. Watch for enemy positions." The cave system was even more complex than their intelligence had indicated. Passages branched in multiple directions, some leading deeper into the mountain while others curved back toward the surface. Sarah's team moved methodically, using the navigation techniques they had developed during months of underground training. "Contact front," whispered Torres, who was walking point for the formation. 2 guards approximately 50 meters ahead. Sarah moved forward to assess the situation. Through her night vision equipment, she could see 2 armed fighters positioned at a checkpoint that blocked the main passage deeper into the cave system. Eliminating them would have to be done silently to avoid alerting the rest of the terrorist organization. "Walsh, Rodriguez, take them quietly," she ordered. Rest of the team maintained security. The 2 SEALs moved forward like shadows, using the natural rock formations for concealment. Within minutes, both guards had been eliminated without raising an alarm, and the team continued deeper into the mountain. The terrorist conference was taking place in a large natural chamber nearly a mile inside the cave system. Sarah's team approached the area carefully, using perimeter reconnaissance to identify guard positions and escape routes before beginning their assault. "I count 23 tangos in the main chamber," reported Torres from his observation position. Multiple high-value targets confirmed present. Sarah studied the tactical situation through her own observation equipment. The chamber was large enough to require coordinated fire from multiple positions, but the confined space also meant that her team would have significant advantages once they initiated their attack. "Rodriguez, take Walsh and Peterson to the east entrance. Torres, Williams, and Garcia moved to the west side. Johnson and I will take the main entrance. Initiate on my signal. The assault began with flashbang grenades that disoriented the terrorists, while Sarah's team moved into the chamber from 3 directions simultaneously. The firefight was brief, but intense, with her team's superior training and tactical coordination overwhelming the terrorists before they could mount effective resistance. All primary targets eliminated, Rodriguez reported as the shooting ended. Beginning intelligence collection. The team gathered computer equipment, documents, and communication devices that would provide valuable information about planned attacks. But Sarah knew that their most dangerous challenge still lay ahead, getting out of the cave system before enemy reinforcements could trap them underground. Exfil route compromised, Torres announced grimly. Multiple enemy forces moving into the cave system from the main entrance. Sarah felt a moment of cold calculation as she assessed their options. The primary extraction plan had assumed they would be able to leave the way they came in, but enemy reinforcements had made that impossible. They would need to use one of the emergency routes they had identified during mission planning. Emergency exfil through the North Passage, she decided. It leads to a secondary exit approximately 2 miles from here. Move fast, stay together. The withdrawal through unfamiliar passages was harrowing. Sarah's team moved as quickly as possible while maintaining security, but they could hear enemy forces behind them, searching systematically through the cave system. The race was between their knowledge of the underground terrain and the terrorists' familiarity with their own stronghold. Exit in sight, called Johnson from the front of the formation. Looks clear. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief as her team emerged from the mountain into the pre-dawn darkness of the Afghan sky. The extraction helicopters were already approaching, their pilots having been alerted when the team activated their emergency beacon. As they lifted off into the morning sun, Sarah looked back at the mountain that had nearly become their tomb. The mission had succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. 6 major terrorist leaders eliminated, massive intelligence gathered, and coordinated attacks prevented. But, more importantly, they had proven that American Special Operations Forces could adapt and overcome any challenge, no matter how unprecedented or dangerous. Outstanding work, team, she said over the helicopter's communication system. You just made history. 5 years after Operation Silver Thunder, Commander Sarah Martinez stood on the deck of the USS Ronald Reagan, watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. The stars on her uniform reflected the dying light as she prepared for what would be either her greatest triumph or her final mission as a SEAL officer. The intelligence briefing had been classified at levels so high that only a handful of people in the entire military knew the full scope of what they were facing. A rogue nuclear physicist had stolen weapons-grade plutonium from a research facility in Pakistan and was planning to sell it to the highest bidder among international terrorist organizations. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow night, Admiral Hayes had explained during the top-secret briefing in Washington. Our sources indicate that representatives from 5 major terrorist groups will be present, along with several state actors who can't be allowed to acquire nuclear materials. Sarah had listened to the briefing with the analytical mind that had made her one of the most trusted special operations commanders in the U.S. military. What's the location? A cargo ship in international waters, approximately 200 miles off the coast of Somalia. The vessel is heavily armed and carries a crew of experienced mercenaries. Conventional naval forces would trigger a firefight that could result in nuclear materials being scattered into the ocean. The mission parameters were unlike anything Sarah had faced in her decade as a SEAL. Her team would have to board the cargo ship without being detected, locate and secure the nuclear materials, eliminate or capture the rogue scientist, and prevent the sale from taking place, all while ensuring that deadly radioactive materials didn't end up contaminating the Indian Ocean. Commander Martinez, Admiral Hayes had said as the briefing concluded, I'm giving you complete operational authority for this mission. Choose your team, develop your plan, and execute with whatever resources you need. The security implications of failure are beyond calculation. Now, standing on the carrier deck with the mission just hours away, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The angry young soldier who had burned her army uniform had become something she could never have imagined, a commander trusted with preventing nuclear terrorism on a global scale. Final equipment check complete, reported Master Chief Rodriguez, who had served as her senior enlisted advisor for nearly every major mission of her career. His weathered face showed the confidence that came from years of successful operations together. Sarah's team for this mission represented the absolute elite of American special operations. Chief Petty Officer Walsh had developed into one of the finest combat medics in the SEAL community, her small size and quick thinking having saved lives on missions across 3 continents. Petty Officer Torres had become the demolitions expert that other SEAL teams called when conventional explosives weren't sufficient. Transport ready for launch, announced the flight deck officer as Sarah's team made final preparations for insertion. The approach to the target vessel would be made by submersible, allowing them to reach the cargo ship without being detected by radar or visual observation. Sarah's team had trained extensively in underwater vehicle operations, but approaching a moving ship at night in rough seas represented significant challenges even for experienced operators. Dive, 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 called the submersible pilot as they descended beneath the surface of the Indian Ocean. Through the vessel's small windows, Sarah could see the dark water rushing past as they moved toward their target at maximum speed. Target vessel in sight, the pilot announced after 40 minutes of underwater travel. Distance 200 meters and closing. Sarah studied the cargo ship through the submersible's periscope system. The vessel was larger than intelligence reports had indicated, with multiple deck levels that would provide numerous hiding places for both the nuclear materials and potential threats. Guard positions were visible at several points around the ship, and the lighting suggested that security was tight. "Remember, we need to keep this quiet as long as possible," Sarah told her team as they prepared to exit the submersible. "Once they know we're aboard, this becomes a running firefight on a ship carrying weapons-grade plutonium." The underwater approach to the cargo ship required swimming the final 50 meters in full combat gear while maintaining formation and avoiding detection. Sarah led her team through the dark water, using specialized breathing equipment that left no bubbles to betray their presence. Climbing aboard the moving vessel was one of the most challenging aspects of the mission. Sarah's team used magnetic climbing equipment to scale the ship's hull, timing their movements with the ocean swells to avoid being spotted by guards on the upper decks. "All team members aboard," Rodriguez whispered through the encrypted communication system as they assembled in a shadowed area behind the ship's superstructure. Sarah activated her night vision equipment and began assessing the layout of the ship based on intelligence blueprints they had memorized during mission planning. Nuclear materials are most likely stored in the forward cargo hold. The meeting is scheduled to take place in the main deck conference room. Torres, Walsh secure the cargo hold. Rodriguez, Peterson eliminate the guards on the bridge. Williams, Garcia, you're with me. We're going after the scientist. The team dispersed with the silent efficiency that marked elite special operations. Sarah moved through the ship's narrow corridors with Williams and Garcia, using their night vision advantage to avoid the guards who were patrolling with conventional lighting. The conference room was located on the ship's main deck, accessible through passages that required careful timing to avoid detection. Sarah could hear voices speaking in multiple languages as they approached the meeting location: English, Arabic, Farsi, and what sounded like Russian. "Multiple high-value targets confirmed," she reported quietly. Beginning approach to conference room. Through a small window, Sarah could see the meeting in progress. The rogue scientist, Dr. Rashid Hakim, was demonstrating something to the assembled buyers, presumably the nuclear materials that had brought them all together. Representatives from various terrorist organizations were examining documents and asking technical questions. "On my signal," Sarah whispered to her team members. "Flashbangs first, then we take control of the room. Hakim needs to be captured alive. He's the only one who knows the full scope of nuclear materials that might still be missing." The assault on the conference room was swift and overwhelming. Flashbang grenades disoriented the occupants while Sarah's team moved in with precisely targeted fire. Within seconds, the terrorist representatives were eliminated and Dr. Hakim was secured, alive, but unconscious from the stunning effects of the grenades. Conference room secure, high-value target captured, Sarah reported through the team communication system. Cargo hold secure, came Torres's voice. We've located the nuclear materials, approximately 20 pounds of weapons-grade plutonium in specialized containers. Bridge secure, added Rodriguez. Ship is under our control. Sarah felt a moment of relief, but she knew that the most dangerous phase of the mission was still ahead. They had to extract from the cargo ship with both the captured scientists and the nuclear materials, while ensuring that nothing was left behind that could threaten global security. Prepare for extraction, she ordered. Torres, secure the plutonium for transport. Walsh, prep Hakim for movement. Everyone else, establish security perimeter. The extraction plan called for the submersible to surface alongside the cargo ship, allowing Sarah's team to transfer both their prisoner and the nuclear materials without exposure to other vessels or aircraft that might be monitoring the area. Contact. Williams's voice cut through the night as automatic weapons fire erupted from the ship's stern. Multiple boats approaching from the south. Sarah rushed to a position where she could observe the new threat. 3 fast boats were racing toward the cargo ship, their occupants firing assault rifles and rocket-propelled grenades. Intelligence had failed to identify a security force that was apparently standing by to protect the nuclear sail. All positions, prepare for assault, Sarah commanded. We hold this ship until extraction is complete. The firefight that followed was unlike anything in Sarah's experience. The attacking boats maneuvered around the cargo ship while her team engaged from multiple deck positions, using their superior training and equipment to maintain tactical advantage despite being outnumbered. RPG incoming, shouted Garcia as a rocket-propelled grenade streaked toward the ship's superstructure. Sarah threw herself behind cover as the explosion shook the entire vessel, sending shrapnel and debris across the deck. When she looked up, she could see that the attack boats were attempting to board the ship at multiple points simultaneously. Rodriguez, take Peterson and secure the starboard side, she ordered. Torres, Walsh, hold the port side. Williams, Garcia, you're with me. We're going to eliminate the lead boat. Sarah moved to a position where she could engage the attacking boats with precision fire. Her rifle found targets systematically, boat engines, steering mechanisms, and the fighters who were attempting to climb aboard the cargo ship. Her team's superior marksmanship began to turn the tide of the battle. Submersible alongside, came a call from Rodriguez. Extraction ready. Sarah knew they had only minutes to complete the transfer before the attacking boats could overwhelm their positions. Torres, move the nuclear materials. Walsh, get Hakim to the sub. Everyone else, covering fire. The final phase of the extraction was conducted under intense enemy fire. Sarah's team moved with the coordinated precision that came from years of training together, each member understanding their role and executing flawlessly despite the chaos around them. Nuclear materials secure aboard extraction vehicle, Torres reported as he completed the transfer of the plutonium containers. High-value target aboard and secured, added Walsh, confirming that Dr. Hakim was safely transferred to the submersible. Sarah took one last look around the cargo ship to ensure that nothing of intelligence value was being left behind. The attacking boats had been disabled or driven off, but she knew that other forces might be responding to the location. All team members extract now, she ordered, beginning her own movement toward the submersible. The underwater journey back to the USS Ronald Reagan was tense, but successful. Sarah's team had accomplished something unprecedented, preventing nuclear materials from falling into terrorist hands while capturing the scientist responsible for the theft. As they surfaced near the aircraft carrier, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment that went beyond personal achievement. Her team had prevented what could have been the worst terrorist attack in human history, and they had done it through skill, courage, and the determination to succeed regardless of the odds. Outstanding work, Commander, Admiral Hayes said as Sarah climbed aboard the carrier. Your team just prevented a nuclear catastrophe. Sarah looked back at her team members as they transferred the nuclear materials to secure storage and handed over their prisoner to intelligence specialists. Each face showed the quiet satisfaction of warriors who had completed an impossible mission. "We did what SEALs do, ma'am," Sarah replied. "Whatever it takes to protect innocent people." Later that night, standing alone on the carrier deck, Sarah thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. The frustrated Army soldier who had burned her uniform in anger had become a combat leader trusted with the most critical missions her country could assign. The girl who had been told that women couldn't serve in elite units had not only proven that wrong, she had redefined what was possible when determination met opportunity. The SEAL trident on her uniform represented more than personal achievement now. It was proof that excellence knows no gender, and that America's security was protected by the best warriors the nation could produce, regardless of who they were or where they came from. Commander Sarah Martinez had found her place among the elite, and she had earned it through blood, sweat, and the unwavering commitment to be better than anyone thought possible. The flames that had consumed her old uniform had forged something stronger, a warrior who would never stop fighting for what was right.